What's up everybody, welcome to another Nocturnal Game Review. Today we are reviewing the 8th installment in the Resident Evil franchise, Resident Evil Village. Now Village is the sequel to the critically acclaimed Resident Evil 7 Biohazard and continues the story of Ethan Winters, which, if you haven't played 7, I would highly recommend starting there since, it's a great game. However, if you don't have the time or you're not really interested, it's not necessary to play 7 before, Village. So, does Village end up living up to the hype? Is it a worthy successor to Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil Biohazard? Well, let's maintain eye contact. Up here, and let's get to the scores. Okay, so let's start with the story, and I'm going to keep this review relatively spoiler-free, so there's no need to worry if you're currently playing the game or if you plan on playing the game in the future. Now, story is important in almost every game, but especially in Resident Evil. The last thing we need is another Resident Evil 6. Dear God, please no. Village starts with Ethan, his wife, and his daughter Rose enjoying life at home. There's no hillbillies, there's no cannibalism, it's just a normal life. Then shit pops off, and you're thrusted into the madness that is Village. And it's the perfect word to describe the story of Village: madness. This game gets batshit insane, okay? With some of its story devices, I just don't know what these writers were on when they were making this game, okay? The core of the story, the story at its core is a dad trying to find his daughter. But it's not that simple, and let's just say it's a story only Resident Evil could probably pull off and tell. The story, to me, gets a 10 out of 10. There's a lot to dive into. Once again, I don't want to spoil anything, but we'll just leave it at that. I think everyone will enjoy what's going on in Resident Evil Village. Now for the graphics. The graphics in Resident Evil Village, or Village if we can just start, calling it by its short name, can be absolutely stunning at times and can make you pause and take in all the gorgeous scenery. The first time you see the village and the castle from on top of a hill, you really have to stop and soak up all the detail that went into this game. The waterfall, the birds flying, the castle and the backdrop, it all meshes together for a captivating setting. Now, there are times where the graphics can be a bit muddled and a little bit muddy, and the game has a very brown palette, but altogether I think it ties in well with the aesthetic, and I was pleasantly surprised by the visuals, and the visuals for this game earn a 9 out of 10 for me. Now, it's not groundbreaking at all, it's very gorgeous and good to look at, but some of the character models, they can be a little bit off at times, which is why it gets that 9 out of 10 instead of, a 10 out of 10. Bit nitpicky, but overall I think everyone will enjoy the visuals, and it's a really strong aspect of the game. Probably the most important aspect of any game, besides, story, which drives the game forward, is gameplay. Without, what you had and what you used. The movement, while not slow and as clunky as the original games or anything like that, it adds to the gameplay by making you use hallways, open space, etc. to create distance between you and the enemy. And it adds a lot of tension because if you don't create that distance, you take a shot and you miss, well, guess what? Now that slow-moving zombie's right up in front of you and they will fuck you up. Okay. As for gunplay, crafting, they do have a whole new crafting menu where there's recipes that you can make ammo, mines, food, stuff like that. It adds a nice little aspect of the game where you're hunting down for resources and stuff like that to break the monotony or, the repetitiveness. So it adds a little bit in that regard. But one thing I'd like to report on is that one of the worst parts of most games, which is backtracking, is heavily present in Village. And I fucking love it because Resident Evil does backtracking right, okay? It's wonderful. In Village, there's locked doors, locked pathways that you need keys and crests to open said pathways and doors. As you find them, it opens up new parts of the map and new places to explore. So that way, when you're backtracking to these old areas, it's like a whole new experience. You have new doorways, new pathways to go down, find new weapons, etc. Now, for new players or first-time players of the survival horror genre or of Resident Evil in general, this might be seen as a negative or a little bit frustrating, but to me, it's a huge positive in my book and adds more to... Forgot to mention puzzles. Now, I was watching one of my friends stream not too long ago, and it wasn't a puzzle, but he pretty much had like a meat grinder coming at him at full speed. Couldn't figure out what the hell to do. And that just adds to another layer to Resident Evil Village and Resident Evil in general, having those puzzles that make you scratch your head like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Then you figure it out and you're like, oh, I'm fucking retarded. It's a huge part of Resident Evil and a huge part of Village, which I'm happy to say. Overall, gameplay for me gets a 10 out of 10. The sound and atmosphere in Village, to put it shortly, is fantastic. Play this game with headphones on, please, and I guarantee you will not leave the session with clean underwear. It'll have you on the edge of your seat, twigs snapping, growls from the darkness, you hear footsteps. You're never alone, you never feel alone in Resident Evil Village. You always have the feeling of someone stalking you. You always have eyes on you. That's what it feels like throughout the game. The first section, after getting out of Ethan's house, sets the bar for tension and how to create suspense in a horror game. Everyone should take notes. Outlast, take notes. This is how you create suspense and tension in a video game. After that first section, I knew I was in for one hell of a ride, and I wasn't disappointed. That's what she said. Sound gets a 10 out of 10. The sound adds so much to the game. Just the ambiance alone, ambience, however the fuck you pronounce it, can make you hesitant to open the next door or really even move out of the area you're in. 10 out of 10 for sound. Last but not least are the bosses in Village. And to be honest, they're a mixed bag. You know, you have to defeat 5 bosses, which are the 4 Lords of Lady Miranda, who is the big boss and antagonist of Village. And while they're not the worst battles of all time, a few left me just wanting more or expecting more of a challenge. Some just seemed way too easy and left me breezing on to the next boss. Now, every Lord is unique, and everything leading up to those battles was top-notch. It was fantastic. Like I said, I don't want to spoil the game for y'all. It is a survival horror game, and these type of games thrive on surprises and keeping the player on their toes. But each Lord battle has its positives and negatives. The first battle, it's big, it's epic. The whole time you're just thinking, how am I going to kill this thing? And then, like a big old flash of light, it's just right in front of you the entire time, and it's just super easy. And then you're done. I played on standard, and the first 2 bosses, I didn't die once. Now, on harder difficulties, of course, you know, that may change. But on standard, which is what I played on, those first 2 bosses, oh, spoiler alert, were a little bit of a letdown. And those 2 bosses actually ended up being the most disappointing aspect of the game because they were so cool. Everything leading up to it was awesome. Now, the bosses for me get an 8 out of 10. And while some are too easy, that lead up is just fantastic, and everything surrounding that boss is great, which is what earns it its 8 out of 10. In conclusion, Resident Evil Village is a simply fantastic game, and a more than worthy sequel to Resident Evil Biohazard. If you're a fan of horror games or survival horror, this is a must-have game. You should stop watching right now and go buy it. But even if you're not, the atmosphere, story, bosses, puzzles is justification enough to go out and buy this game. Resident Evil Village earns a 9.4 out of 10 and is my booking as one of the games of the year. I'm not sure if it'll win it, but it's up there, okay? So go check it out, guys and girls, and I'll see y'all on the next Nocturnal Game Review. See ya.